All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 3 o'clock. Chad here. Trailblazers got throttled last night in Denver. 146-117, the final Nuggets win. Jokic, 40 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, and 3/4 of work. The Nuggets shot better than 60% and scored 28 points off of 16 Blazers turnovers. But the bright spot, Blazers rookie Donovan Clingan scored a career-high 21 points on a perfect 8 for 8 shooting and grabbed 7 boards. Coach Phillips on the big man after the game.
He was aggressive. I thought even defensively he did a pretty good job in a nightmare matchup, obviously. Man, he finished the ball very well. I thought he passed it pretty well. It was just a really good game for DC.
Portland has now dropped back-to-back games after winning 6 straight. They get another shot at the Nuggets tomorrow night. Tip-off from Ball Arena at 6. Our coverage is at 4 with Blazers Game Day hosted by Chris Burkhardt. Brandon Ingram agrees to a 3-year extension with the Raptors. Alex Len has signed with the Lakers. Kellen Moore is officially the head coach of the Saints, and the Dodgers and Clayton Kershaw have agreed on a new deal.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing. Brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
And the other guard wears number 77. 6'7", 7th campaign from Slovenia, Luka Doncic.
Survey and find Doncic, because he's got to get his sea legs back. He has not played since Christmas. For 3! Luka, welcome to the Lakers!
The Blazers have had the best defense in the NBA over the last 12 games. Tonight, they ran into about as efficient of an offensive performance as you will ever see. Inbound to Banton, he puts up a deep 3. It's an air ball, and that's how the game will end. 146-117, the final score, as the Blazers fall to the Nuggets here at Ball Arena. They dropped to 23-31. The Nuggets are 34-19. The season series even at a game apiece. And we'll do it all over again on Wednesday night.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Travis and Chad starts now.
Well, you could hear it in Travis's voice. It was one of those games last night. As much fun as the 6-game winning streak and 10 of 11 were, last night was a clunker. Nikola Jokic was putting on a basketball clinic in Denver last night. I thought it was very kind of him to ask the Blazers to come and be a part of his clinic. 40 points, 8 boards, 7 assists through 3/4 of work. I've got more thoughts on Jokic. There is a bright spot from the game last night, which was fun to see. And you heard it in the open. Luka made his Laker debut last night. He didn't look so fat in a Laker uniform. I can't believe the Mavericks traded him. That is going to come back to bite them, and it already has. Their fans are outraged, and rightfully so. They can't believe that they traded away a top 3 player in the world, and now he's out there balling around with LeBron. It's crazy. But the Lakers win big over the Jazz. Luka has now officially made his Laker debut. And the good news for all of us, Luka's going to be in town after the All-Star break on February 20th at Moda Center with LeBron. That's going to be fun. It's crazy to see Luka and LeBron playing together. And LeBron James is still playing at a top 5 level right now in the NBA. Or at least he's playing at a top 5 level in the NBA ever since J.J. Redick had that conversation with him. So Luka is now a Laker. We saw that. And I have a new dream in life. And you heard his voice in the open of the show. Lawrence Tanter is my favorite PA announcer in the entire NBA. He's been doing Laker games ever since I was a little boy watching the NBA Finals with the Lakers and Celtics. And just the way he says, Luka Doncic. It reminds me of all the great names. Magic Johnson or Kobe Bryant. I love Lawrence Tanter. Now, I'm a big Mark Mason guy too, but Lawrence Tanter is the man. I met him once when I was down at a Laker game, Lakers Trailblazers at Staples Center. And I was walking into the media room, and a very large man was walking towards me, and I knew who it was. He's tall, Lawrence Tanter. I got to talking to him and told him he was my favorite. I'm really sure he cared about that. But he was very kind, and he's a longtime radio guy and hosted jazz radio for quite some time down in the L.A. area. So he's got the perfect voice. But Lawrence Tanter has now got the Luka Doncic thing down and Slovenia. Crazy. Here's what's coming up on the show today. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, is going to join me to talk Super Bowl. Got to get his reaction to what went down on Sunday in a rather hideous football game, by the way. I still can't believe we had to sit through that mess. Halftime show was meh. Football game was awful. One of the worst Super Bowls I can remember from start until finish as the Eagles just demolished the Kansas City Chiefs. And we got to see Patrick Mahomes look like every other quarterback in the NFL when he's having a bad Sunday. He couldn't get time. He was under pressure, couldn't throw a pass. He threw a couple of picks. He looked hideous. It's bizarre to see a great player look so bad. And it reminded me of Michael Jordan. I think MJ is the only player that I never really saw during his time in the NBA look bad in a big moment or put up a clunker in a bad moment. He never did. He was Mr. Automatic. Even Patrick Mahomes can put up a clunker like that in the Super Bowl. It's crazy. What a horrendous game that was. So Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, to join the show at 4:20. And then coming up at 5:20, the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, is going to join me in studio. And it will be nice to catch up with Kerry. I had lunch with him today, and then I bothered him and said, hey, you should come in studio and hang out with me. He's working on a new project, a new book. And it's funny because a lot of guys I know that retire, they do more work in retirement than they did when they're actually working. And that's Kerry. He's got his website. He's still able to write and cover different stories that he finds interesting, and he's enjoying life. And I love to see that. I love seeing guys or people I care about getting a chance in their later years to enjoy life. But he's working on a new book, and he'll tell us about the concept. But in short, he told me that it's basically like a greatest hits book, meaning he's going back through all of the different stories that he has written covering sports and outside of sports, whatever. And keep in mind, he's been working. He started working for the Oregon Journal when I was born, 1975. And so he's talked to a lot of people. He's covered a lot of games, a lot of big events. He's been there and done that. And now he's going to put together a record in this greatest hits book where he will put together a bunch of the different stories that he's done. You know, stuff with Charles Barkley, with Muhammad Ali, covering the Trailblazers. And he's going to write a preface to each of the stories in the book. And I think it'll be fun to flip through because I'm right in the wheelhouse for the person he's communicating with. And I grew up reading Kerry Agers. I grew up reading Dwight Jaynes. And to be able to relive some of those stories. The one thing I've noticed about life, I'm sure you've probably had this experience, but I've had experiences or have had the opportunity to meet people or talk with people from many years ago, and I've already forgotten about some of those conversations. Or it could be an interview on the show. Because when you talk to a lot of people or you have these different experiences, and you guys all have the same thing, just in different forms, when time goes on, you forget about some of those. So I think it'd be fun to flip through. And Kerry was telling me that he realized as he was flipping through some of the options and he was looking at some of the stories, they were different than what he remembers them as, meaning he uncovers details he had forgotten about. Or maybe the story's just not the way he remembered it. So that's what he's working on, and we'll get a chance to discuss that. I also want to get his take on the Luka trade. I'm sure it's shocking to him just like it is everyone else, and see what else he's got going on. So Kerry Agers at 5:20. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio. Bino is going to join the show coming up at 4:20. You can hit me up on social at Chad and Rip City. You can also call the program if you would like to share your thoughts at 503-248-0620. Now, last night, the Trailblazers got hammered by the Nuggets, and we'll get to Donovan Clingan and his play, which was tremendous. But I got to be honest about Nikola Jokic. When he first started to emerge as one of the greats in the game, I didn't want to accept it or embrace him. And I guess what it is for me is that I'm very protective of the guys that I grew up with and the players I admired when I was younger. So I'm always going to give those guys the benefit of the doubt when it comes to, putting together my all-time list because I love those guys. Magic, Jordan, Larry Bird, who's my favorite, all the guys that I grew up with. Even here in Portland with the Trailblazers, I'm very partial to Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter and Buck Williams and that group from the early 90s because I had a chance to watch them go to the finals in 2 out of 3 years. So they're always going to hold that special place in my heart as a sports fan. So with Jokic, I didn't want to acknowledge him as one of the all-time greats because for 2 reasons. One, I'm protective of the guys that I grew up with, but also initially I was on Team Nurk. I sided with Nurk when he was dealt by Denver, and I was a big supporter of what Nurk brought to Portland initially with Nurk Fever. But the more I watched Jokic, I realized that Denver made the right choice in that whole decision between Jokic or Nurkic. They chose the best player. But as time has gone on, and you've seen him go through some of the wars and then eventually win a championship, or to hear his comments after that 4-overtime thriller at Moda Center in the playoffs back in 2019, he's a very likable guy. He's got a very nonchalant approach to the game. He operates in a slower fashion than a lot of guys do in the league because he doesn't rely on his athleticism. He's a very skilled basketball player with great size, great vision, and a great feel for the game. A better feel for the game than almost anyone else who's played the game. And I was watching him last night as he was putting together this masterpiece against the Trailblazers, and it started to come together in my mind. I saw a lot of Larry Bird in his game last night, and the one thing I admired about Bird and what made him so great, and I heard Michael Cooper, the great Laker, who was one of the best defenders of his time, and Larry Bird will go to his grave saying that Cooper was the best guy to ever defend him. He thought his most difficult games were against Coop. And, of course, Coop loves that because when you play, you want the respect of your peers. Well, what Coop said about Bird is a lot of guys, he said, great scorers. And he played against some good ones in the Iceman or MJ or any of the great scorers of his time. He said a lot of guys, when they pass the ball, a great scorer, a great player, in many cases, they'll use that as an opportunity to maybe catch a breath. But with Larry Bird, he would pass the ball, and you had to keep your eye on him because he immediately was in motion within the offense. If he had the ball in his hands, he was looking for the right pass, the right play to set up a teammate. When he would pass the ball, that's when he would be on the move. He would pass it, and then he would look to move without the basketball to get open or to set a pick for a teammate. So you always had to be aware of where he was at because he was looking to impact the game in so many different ways outside of just scoring. And that's what I saw in Jokic last night. The ability to impact the game even when he's not scoring. The great vision and feel for where his teammates are at, when a guy makes a backdoor cut, the way that he's able to move and use his body around the rim, and he's got the soft touch in the range where he can stroke it from downtown. He can do everything on the basketball floor. I think he's really smart. He's very unselfish. And for Jokic, he doesn't care about the numbers. He wants his play to equate to team success and wins. And he annihilated Portland last night. In 3 quarters of work, first 3 quarters, he was 15 of 22 from the floor, 40 points, 8 boards, and 7 assists. And he had a tremendous impact on the game in 3 quarters. And the Nuggets were up 20, game over. But his feel and vision and understanding of the game, it's next level. And he's one of those guys that truly does have eyes in the back of his dome, almost like he's an owl and he can spin his head around and know what's going on behind him. He sees everything. All right, we're going to keep things rolling here on the show. We'll come back. I want to get to Donovan Clingan, who was terrific last night. We'll hear from Chauncey Billups. He had some good thoughts on a young guy like Clingan getting a chance to battle against one of the all-time greats in Jokic. And then Bino, Brian O, Fox Sports Radio. He told me he's going to be on the move today. I have no idea where he's going, but it's always interesting with Bino. Shacker's got some ideas of where he might be going. All right, let's do this. 503-248-0620. It's freezing booty outside, but it's beautiful. Blue skies and sunshine. You got to love that. All right, Brian O, 420. The Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Eggers at 520. I'm Chad Doing. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, as we're going to break, Michael Shacker played The Stroke from Billy Squire because I mentioned Jokic stroking it from downtown. I was curious about the meaning of the song, so I went to one of my favorite websites, Song Facts. When you hear a title of a certain song like The Stroke, it conjures certain images. Let's just put it that way. And so I was just curious, like, what is the song really about? So I went to Song Facts, and the way they have it written up here, and this is a great website. Now, I'll be honest with you. When it comes to music, I'm not a lyric guy. I honestly am not. And I'm going to be honest about another thing. Most of the time when I'm listening to a song, I'm really not sure what they're saying. Because when someone's singing certain words, I think it's one thing, and it turns out to be they're saying something else. So I never really pay attention to the words. I'm not moved by great lyrics. I'm not moved by the meaning of the lyrics. The way I like music is, does it sound good in my ear? The lyrics are whatever. I don't care. I don't criticize an artist based on lyrics. I care about how it sounds. Does that make sense? Am I the only person like that? Because I know a lot of people that, they talk about someone being a great, writer or lyricist or the meaning they're able to put in the song. Like there are certainly some songs that I understand the message and what they're trying to communicate, and that's fine. But that's not the first thing I notice about a song. Even if the words or the message doesn't make any sense, if it sounds good, it works for me. But on Song Facts, and that's why I go here all the time if I'm curious about a song. I love doing deep dives on artists or songs to find out why something was written, how it came to be, how many different artists worked on it, the purpose behind the song, what type of tragedy or personal circumstances influenced a particular album. Like I love hearing all those details from artists, when certain songs are put out. Well, here on Song Facts about The Stroke from Billy Squire, it says, well, this one sure seems it's about self-love. Quote, you put your right hand down and give a firm handshake. But it goes on to say, but according to Billy Squire in an interview with VH1, the song is actually about the music business. Record labels will, quote, stroke the egos of their artists by telling them how great they are and how they are destined for big things, but it's all to placate them and make it easier to take advantage of them. And it very well could be the case. It sounds like it's about self-love, but it could be about the music biz, according to Squire himself. So who am I to, deny him? He's the one that wrote it.
You should just be thankful that song showed up in Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking about when that song was playing.
So there you go. And I've heard from many artists, anyone that went through the music biz back in the day, they'll all talk about that. It's cutthroat. They'll say whatever needs to be said to you. They'll stroke you. They're trying to put you in a position where they can take advantage of you. That's absolutely true. Speaking of music, the Super Bowl halftime show, Shaq and I were just talking about this, and I've felt like this now for years with the halftime show at the Super Bowl. I thought this year's show was, well, frankly, it was garbage. No disrespect to anyone, but I don't get frustrated by it. And the reason why is because I'm not the demo. I am not the target demo, and neither is Shacker. And for a lot of you out there listening, you're not the target demo either. They're not going to put the Eagles out there. It's not going to be Metallica. I'm not going to get my wish one day of the greatest duo of all time, Hall & Oates, reconciling and doing the halftime show. It's never happening because they're not looking to bring people like you and I in. We're already in. We're in. We are committed to football. No matter what they do, what they say, what happens, we're going to show up and watch the games. And it's true. We can talk about how we don't like this or the officials favor the refs or whatever the case may be. The officials favor the refs. I meant to say Chiefs. Forgive me. No matter what happens, we're going to show up and watch the game. My guess would be they're targeting the ancillary fans, maybe some of the ladies out there, people who aren't hardcore football nuts like we are, or a lot of us are. They're going after a different target. So that's fine. So I don't worry about the halftime show anymore. My daughter thought the halftime show was genius. Hey, Dad, did you hear what he said? Did you see that diss? So it was kind of cool to connect with my daughter on something that she was paying attention to that was involving a football game. But I didn't care about the halftime show. And I'm not going to complain about it or try to sound like an old guy yelling at the clouds because they're not targeting me. They're not worried about what I think about the halftime show. They're going after other people. And apparently it's pretty successful because the numbers that are out on the Super Bowl would suggest that a lot of people tuned in. On average, 127 million. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of eyeballs on one particular event. So whatever they're doing, whoever they're asking to do the halftime show, even though it's not the bands that I want, it doesn't matter. The NFL cannot lose right now. They make whatever decisions they want, and they continue to print money. They do anything they want, and people show up ready to rock because we can't get enough of the game. And for the people who aren't big-time football nuts, they'll tune in because they want to see a halftime show, because they want to check this out, or maybe they're interested in Taylor Swift or whatever the case may be. You know, the NFL has done a heck of a job of packaging and promoting their product. So there you have it. Now we know what the real meaning behind the stroke is. And now we know that a lot of us are not being targeted by the NFL with their halftime festivities during the Super Bowl. And that's okay. It's all right because it's working. 127 million people tuned in. That is like the king of all kings when it comes to television events. Good gracious. No wonder the NFL operates with such arrogance. And think about that. They pull in that many people, and they still have guys with cataracts standing underneath the uprights trying to figure out if a ball went through them or not. And they have no idea how to figure out whether or not something's a first down. And yet they're pulling in 127 million people to watch the Super Bowl. It's wild. Absolutely crazy. All right, Trailblazers last night got pounded by Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. I mentioned with Jokic, I saw a lot of Larry Bird in him last night, and I just tipped the cap to Jokic. He is one of the all-time greats. I respect the way he plays. He reminds me of Bird. He's got great vision. He can score, but he is motivated by doing whatever is necessary on the floor to get his teammates in a better position to have success. I don't really like their head coach. I think Mike Malone's a bit of a clown, but he's a good coach, and that team's playing really well right now. I don't think they can win a championship. I don't think they measure up to Boston or Cleveland or Oklahoma City, but they're playing really good basketball right now. The question for them is always two things now. Depth, or will they get enough help from the guys on the bench, and can they crank up their defense a little bit? I think they were 20th in the NBA in defensive rating going into the game last night. We'll see. But with Jokic, anything's possible because he's so good. Well, the Trailblazers did have a silver lining last night. Donovan Clingan, the rookie, 21 points, 7 rebounds, and he was a perfect 8 for 8 from the field. He was tremendous. And we wondered going into the game how he would look, how he would play, and what his reaction would be to getting a chance to go up against one of the all-time greats in Jokic, to measure yourself. And after the game, Coach Billups took a moment to share his thoughts on Clingan, was asked about what he thought about that game.
I loved it. I thought DC was just obviously a career high for him. He was aggressive. I thought even defensively he did a pretty good job in a nightmare matchup, obviously. But man, he finished the ball very well. I thought he passed it pretty well. It was just a really good game for DC. Really good game.
It was good. And I love DC. I can't believe the Blazers got him in the first round last year. And I think that's going to be one of those players where, you know, a couple of years from now, 3 years from now, someone's going to be like, wait, what? Where'd they get Clingan? How'd he fall to them? It's worked out really nicely so far. And he hasn't played big minutes. You know, from what I've been told throughout the year, because I've been clamoring for him to get more minutes, the majority of people seem to think it's about conditioning, that it takes time for a big, someone of his size, to get up to the NBA grind, the schedule, and to get his conditioning in the right place. But in the limited minutes he's played, he's been very productive. Smart, very good defender, great shot blocker. His PERS 36 numbers would indicate that, but he's been really good. Now the more important question is this. You know, Coach Billups was asked about Clingan getting a chance to go up against Jokic and whether or not that's good for him. Is that something you want from your young players, to get that experience going up against one of the all-time greats, to see where you're really at and what you need to do to improve your game? Like, that's really what it's all about. And Coach Billups shared his thoughts on Clingan getting an opportunity to face Jokic.
It is. I mean, this is a part of the young guys' development. You know, I always because it's how I grew up in the league. You know, you young guys, that's a part of it. You know, you got to know what that feels like to guard the best, player in the league. Sometimes without help and without coverage, You need to see what that feels like. If you're going to be a dominant defender in the league, these are these tough lessons that you need to learn, you know. So while they are maybe painful, trust me, he'll remember it. We get to do it again on Wednesday. You know, I thought he did a pretty good job on him the last time as well. I really did. And I thought he was cool. I mean, there's just so much that comes with that. I mean, fives don't usually run pick and roll as the ball handler. You're asking my fives to get through pick and rolls or get under pick and coverage and pick and, you know, it's a tall order when they're used to playing on the other side of that pick. So I thought he did a good job in both nights, you know, and obviously, you know, you look down at Joker's 48-7 in 3 quarters in 30 minutes. So I didn't think he could miss a shot either. I mean, that was crazy.
All right, there's Coach Billups. I think it's great for him. Jokic is the best, and Klingon gets a chance to get out there and really learn. And I'm a big believer that the best way to learn, you know, aside from your practice habits and spending time with the coaches and just that day-to-day grind on really going through the process of working on your game, is getting out there on the floor and being around other greats. It kind of reminds me of, you know, with the Olympic team, when you get the invite to go and be a part of that process, when they're doing the tryouts and trying to put the team together. I think it's good for the stars on your team to go and be a part of Team USA so they can be around the other greats, to talk, you know, about the trade, how you do this, how you do that. When you're around other great players, you get a chance to study and watch and really develop. And for someone like Klingon, who's young and still learning the position in the NBA, and, you know, the center position is one of the more difficult positions to grasp because you're dealing with a different type of athlete in the NBA. Obviously, you've got to earn the respect of the officials, and that takes time, so you get into foul trouble. But being out there on the floor helps. But going up against Jokic to see how he feels the game, how he sees the game, to go up against a big that, like Coach said, is in pick-and-roll situations. It's so bizarre for Klingon to have to play a guy like Jokic. It's like, why is a guy that big out behind the three-point circle handling the rock like a guard? What's up with that? Can you imagine being Klingon? You're like, oh, what's he doing out there? Because he's so ridiculously good at his size with all the different things he can do. And Jokic has the body of a classic NBA center, big and powerful, but he's got the handle of a guard. He's one unique package. But I think for Klingon, those moments, and one game doesn't mean anything or everything, but to be out there and play like that, imagine what type of confidence boost that will give him as he continues to move forward. And he showed great touch with the shot. He obviously has been working on his outside shot. I mean, Klingon really wants to be good. And Klingon's got the right attitude. He's one of those guys like Jokic where he just wants to play in a way that's going to help his team win. A lot of guys are worried about numbers. A lot of guys are worried about touches. But the best player is going to, I think, look at the game and say, what way do I need to play that can best help my team and put us in a position to win? And if you focus on that and do that, good things are going to come. Now, my man and my good friend Michael Allen Harrison has chimed in on the Super Bowl halftime show, and he's qualified to speak on this because he's an artist himself, and he knows what it's like to perform in front of a bunch of people. And he just told me that the halftime show totally missed the mark. It did not play to a wide variety of demographics, only to one demographic. That artist is good at what he does, but I think to probably 80% of the people watching the Super Bowl, they lost interest after about 90 seconds. Just poor choices on the part of the producers of the Super Bowl. They forgot to read the entire room, as in about 140 million people in the U.S. and abroad with a variety of taste that love football. And see, that's another good point, too. I mean, I love music, but I love a wide variety of music, just like Shacker does. And I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that as you've gotten older, is that your taste for music expands. And I've talked to Michael about that before, too, where as you get older, you develop a more complex ear for music. You desire different things. I don't know what the best way to solve it is, though. Maybe do a variety show, or instead of just one artist, you could have maybe a couple of different artists, you know, playing their songs. And that way you have a chance to kind of touch on a little bit of everything and appeal to more people. Because I can tell you if they would have had one of the acts in there that I follow or listen to, I'm watching for sure. I'm totally down. And I want to see that. I wanted to make the halftime show great again as I was driving home, so I went back and listened to some halftime shows from the past, including Michael Jackson. But they're just not targeting, nor did they even attempt to try to target my demo for that halftime show. What can you do? The NFL is going to do what they're going to do because they win no matter what decisions they make. They can even lie about concussions for years, and they still come out of that winning. They've got some power, big time. But big props to Donovan Clingan. Get a chance to play against one of the greats, and you see him go out there and play like that, which is terrific. And the reason why I can take satisfaction from a game where they got completely shredded by the Nuggets offense, because for me, and as we've talked about throughout the year, what's the number one priority? Well, of course, I've said it a million times. It's player development. It's about the young guys continuing to take that step forward. Who cares if they lost last night? Because the big picture is these young guys. So look at what we've had now over the last couple of months. We had Donovan Clingan last night have a career night, 21.7 rebounds, 8 of 8 from the floor. Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara have been sensational, the two team MVPs throughout the year so far this season. No question about it. And they're versatile, they're long, and they bring real defense. Those two guys have been great. We've also seen dramatic improvement from Scoot over the last month, where he's turning a corner, and that's exciting. I love the play he had last night in the first half where he finished with the left hand at the rim with contact and got an and one opportunity. Finishing with contact is tough, but Scoot's strong. That's a very strong 21-year-old right there. So I respect that. I love the way Scoot's coming along, and we see continued progression from Shaden and, of course, the good response from him after Coach benched him for crappy defense. So it's good. The young players are getting better, and we're seeing that improvement. And we're seeing 5 guys now moving into the future where they've got a foundation. Scoot, Shaden, Denny, Tumani, and Clingan. That's great. That's what you want. And they're going to be able to add to that during the summertime. So one more game, and these games are always a little bit dicey. The game right before the All-Star break, I don't know because I've never been an NBA player, but my guess would be the focus level for a game probably doesn't get much lower in the NBA season than the one right before the All-Star break. Because the guys playing for the Trailblazers know when that game tomorrow night is over, they get a week plus off, a little in-season vacation. It gives them a chance to get away for a few days. They can lay low at home and chill if they want. They can go visit family. Whatever they want to do, they've got the time to go do it. Unless, of course, you're participating in the All-Star weekend. So the Blazers will get a chance to refresh. And then after All-Star break, the stretch run. And there's been a ton of games. I think 15 of them in January. February is always a light month with the All-Star break. And then it finishes with a flurry with 14 or 15 games in March. And then you get that last week of April where you have like 8 games jammed in like 6 games jammed in like an 8-day span or something like that. So there you go. But I'm most encouraged by the youth and the development. One other thing from Coach Billups, he talked about the game in general, the loss last night. They gave up 146 points to Denver, and they shot better than 60%. I think they hit the first 11 shots from the field.
I thought we were still in it most of the evening until obviously the fourth quarter. It got away, but we played pretty good. First quarter was rough. Obviously the third quarter was rough. But, man, we was in striking distance, and we just couldn't get them to miss. And then there's a few times we got them to miss. We got them to turn over. We turn it right back over. I mean, it's first and fast break points, first and points in the – I mean, it's just tough. It's tough sledding, and so we could never really get over the hump in the game. And then DA goes down, Scoot goes down, and it makes it tough.
All right, there's Coach Billups. So the Blazers tomorrow, one more game in Denver against the Nuggets. Is this pound cake? Van Halen?
Yeah, because he said the Blazers got pounded.
All right. Now, I believe the title of that album was For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That sounds inappropriate to me.
Just read between the lines. You know what they're saying.
All right, let's pound cake. Song facts. Let's try this out again. All right. The song Yeah, I'm not going to read what this song's about. Thanks, Song Facts. Really appreciate your help. Like you said, just read between the lines on this song. I think one of the other songs I like on this album is called Man on a Mission. I don't think they had to dig too deep below the surface to come up with ideas for this one, right?
Yeah. Gulf War mission? I mean, what were they talking about? It was early 90s.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. We got Brian O coming up at 4:20 to talk Super Bowl. And then the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers, at 5:20. Chad Doing, you got the Rip City Drive. All right, going back to the song from Van Halen for just a moment, Pound Cake. Sammy Habar. Well, I'm on top of my game today. Look out, people. This show is going straight to the Radio Hall of Fame with Sammy Hagar. Is he in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So Sammy Hagar of Van Halen said that he liked people who were like pound cake. That is, what you see is what you get, nothing to hide. So I kind of like that because pound cake, like, again, I'm not a sweets guy. Now, Shacker's wife bakes and bakes regularly, so she would probably have a pretty good idea on how to make a mean pound cake. But from my understanding of pound cake, if I remember seeing one or the last time my mom made one, it's plain. Like what you see is what you get. It's just a cake. There's nothing to it. No icing, no sprinkles, no nothing. It's just plain cake. What you see is what you get. I guess that's what he means by it. And again, that goes back to what Squire was talking about with the stroke. In the music business, my guess would be is that Sammy Hagar dealt with a lot of people that what you saw was not what you got. Because you got a bunch of fake people trying to get to you or do this or do that because everyone's looking out for themselves. It's crazy business if you think about it. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 503-248-0620. You can also hit me up on social. You'll find me there at Chad in Rip City, at Chad in Rip City. I am going to focus more on Luka Doncic. He made his debut last night in L.A. with the Lakers. They smoked the Jazz, and Luka made his debut. I think I told you this. There's been all sorts of theories on why the Mavericks traded him. What surprises me is how much junk is coming out from their organization on Luka. And why are they trying so bad to make him look bad? I guess it's because they're under a lot of fire from the fan base and the people around the organization who think they're crazy for trading Luka. And they are. You're crazy. You don't just trade away the top 3 player in the world. And if you're going to do something ridiculous like that, make sure you get a bunch of draft capital in return. You don't trade him for Anthony Davis and then try to sell everyone that, hey, we're really trying to win a championship. We care about defense. No, you don't. You're idiots. You just traded away Luka for crying out loud. I mean, he's a great player. One of the 3 best in the world. So the latest theory, now this one here I think has got some credence to it. I don't know about the conspiracy theories about the Adelson group and the pressure they're trying to put on the local politicians. There could be something to that. I don't know. There are people down in Texas that believe that they're trying to put pressure on the legislator to open up the gambling market down there. And they've got certain designs of what they want to do. And one way to put pressure on them would be to try and threaten to take the Mavs away and move them to Vegas. That's kind of the idea around it. But this one here, I think, has got some credence to it. So I talked to a guy that I trust, good source. And look, I'm not pretending to be like sources guy. I'm not that guy. All right. I just know a couple of people. And sometimes you talk to someone that knows some important people and they share information. So what I was told is that, one, Pat Riley recently had a conversation with Jeannie Buss, who is the owner of the LA Lakers. I'm a big fan of Jeannie Buss, and I want to see her do well because I like Jeannie Buss. Well, Pat Riley obviously knows her well. He used to coach there at the Lakers and was the man in charge of the Showtime Lakers when they went back-to-back in the late 80s. Well, I think Pat was out there for a Michael Cooper celebration. So anyways, Pat apparently told Jeannie that, hey, you need to get your franchise under control. LeBron is sinking the franchise, or should I say Lay GM is sinking your franchise, and you need to start planning for the future, for life after LeBron. Now, Pat Riley would know because I was told part of the issue with LeBron and Pat Riley when Bron left Miami and went back to Cleveland was that Pat was one of the few guys that would say no to LeBron, meaning he didn't want his crew hanging around. You know, Pat tried to maintain a certain level of control in his franchise. And while he respected LeBron and what he brought to the team, he did not give LeBron free rein to do whatever he wanted. And, of course, LeBron had that in Cleveland. Well, he told Jeannie, like, hey, you got to plan for the future. You need to get off LeBron. And I think that's where the idea for Luka started, was that conversation and when they started to look to the future and what they were going to do to replace him. Now, obviously, Nico and Pelinka, they have a good relationship, and they were able to start the dialogue and the conversation. Well, this same person also told me that with the Adelson Group, they come in and take over. They're now the principal owners. It used to be Mark Cuban. They started to take a look around and see how things were going with the franchise, and they realized that Luka, as great as he is, was coming up for a Supermax extension that would have paid him in excess of $350 million. And when you commit that type of money to one player, both sides have to be all in. And from what I was told, Luka, when they would do road trips, not always a participant in team events or team functions. I guess Kyrie Irving would rent out places like Dave & Buster's for team events, but Luka a lot of times wouldn't show up for these type of activities because he was hanging with his Euro boys. Well, you combine that with the fact that he didn't always focus on his conditioning or take his conditioning as seriously as maybe the team would want him to, that they started to take a look at his overall buy-in with the team, his conditioning, and the way he took care of his body. And they look at that price tag of $350+ million for the Supermax, and they're like, yeah, we got to move off that. So, of course, I asked, well, okay, fine, you want to move off Luka. Why didn't they demand more draft capital in return? And he told me that the Lakers were hesitant to give up more draft capital because they weren't certain that Luka, they wanted to make sure he was going to re-sign. Well, those are all things you can work out before the deal. I'm sorry, if I'm dealing Luka, which is dumb to begin with, I'm going to get just a ton of draft picks in return so I can rebuild my franchise. Don't kick me one future first in like 2031 and friggin' Anthony Davis. I need more than that. It doesn't make sense. But Luka made his debut. We're going to hear from Luka. We'll hear from LeBron as he made his debut. Brian No talking Super Bowl. We'll get his take on the game coming up at 4:20. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, what's going on? 4 o'clock chat here. Your Trailblazers got dumped last night in Denver, 146-117. Jokic on fire, 40 points, 8 boards, 7 assists in 3 quarters. Nuggets shot better than 60%, and they scored 28 points off of 16 Trailblazer turnovers. The bright spot, the rookie Donovan Clingan, career-high 21. He was a perfect 8 for 8 from the floor, grabbed 7 rebounds. Portland has now dropped back-to-back games after winning 6 straight. They'll get another shot at Denver tomorrow night. Tip-off from Ball Arena at 6. Our coverage starts with Game Day, hosted by Chris Burkhardt. Elsewhere, Luka made his debut with the Lakers in a win over the Jazz and was asked afterwards what it was like playing with LeBron.
I mean, it's special. I mean, he sees the game in a different way than a lot of people, and his IQ is insane. And just, have 2 guys like that on court, I think it's going to help the whole team out.
Elsewhere, Brandon Ingram agrees to a 3-year extension with the Raptors. Alex Lynn has signed a deal with the Lakers. Kellen Moore, officially the head coach of the Saints, and the Dodgers and Clayton Kershaw have agreed on a new deal. Now, you remember the story I shared with you on this song. I think it was Rick James produced the song. Eddie Murphy became a smash success in his music debut. And it all started with a bet between Murphy and Richard Pryor. And Richard's like, bro, you can't do a full album without jokes and just music. It's not even possible. And I think they bet $100,000 on it. Eddie won, and he said that Richard never paid him before he died. So Pryor went to his grave with his money. It's amazing. This was a big song back in the day. All right. I mentioned that Clayton Kershaw has now, he's agreed to terms with the Dodgers. So he's back. So within the last 2 years, and this is why I think the Dodgers this season, if they're healthy or remain somewhat healthy, they're going to run past the Mariners. Their record wins of, 116 back in 01. I think the Dodgers will get to 120 and smash the record. In the last 2 years, the Dodgers have acquired Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Teoscar Hernandez, Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow, Tommy Edman, Jack Flaherty, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, Hyesung Kim, Michael Kopech, and they've re-signed Kike Hernandez, Clayton Kershaw, and, of course, that was led by Mr. Friedman. So there you go. The Dodgers should surpass the Mariners' win total. It's one of the greatest baseball teams assembled in my lifetime. They've got ridiculous resources. They have ridiculous talent, and they're fun to watch because it's like watching an all-star game every night with all the different guys they have on their team. And Friedman, their general manager, I saw him in New York last year when I was there for the Dodgers-Yankees series. And I was with someone who's a huge Dodger fan. And Friedman stands out because he's really short. He was with his family, and I was like, you should go over and say hi to him. And there were a couple other Dodger fans who noticed him and walked up and asked if they could take a picture with him, and he obliged them. But the person I was with chickened out. Did not want to disturb him with his family. We were outside of we were right there at the fountain by the 9/11 Memorial. And this is, I think, on the Monday after the series. So he's probably in a good mood. The Dodgers just won that series against the Yanks, and he was chilling with the fam. That's a pretty good deal there by Friedman. What an all-star team they are. I don't even know if Kershaw is going to be able to get on the field. It's crazy. All right, Luka officially made his debut last night with the Lakers. It's pretty amazing to see LeBron and Luka running around on the floor together. I mean, think about that. They traded Luka to the Lakers for AD and a first-round pick because he drank beer and he's fat, or so they say. Maverick fans would disagree. That's why they were chanting, "He's not fat, bring him back." That's already one of the greatest sports chants of all time. He's not fat, bring him back. I'm so glad I'm not a Mavericks fan. If you were a Dallas Mavericks fan and you saw that one come across the wire, once you realized it was real and not a fake or some type of hack job on Shams, can you imagine the process of trying to accept that news? Wait a second. Nico Harrison did what? Wait a second. We traded Luka to the Lakers? And then you realize what they got back in return. You're like, wait, what? Oh, my goodness. The process of grief in that one. They're never going to get over that. You'll never forget that if you're a Mavericks fan. Unless, of course, Anthony Davis leads them to 2 championships with Kyrie. And, of course, that's not happening. It's bizarre. And did you see the other night where they turned the Hollywood sign into, instead of the 2 L's, they had 2 7s in gold for Doncic's number, 77? I mean, you got to give LA credit. They don't do a lot of things well there, but they do take care of their stars. That was pretty sweet. I can't imagine rolling into Hollywood and seeing my number up there on the sign, up there on the hills. That's a welcoming party right there. But Luka and the Lakers got the win over the Jazz. Not a great shooting night for Luka, but his first game in a Laker uniform. Definitely some excitement. And I think offensively, when you look at the versatility they have now and the type of pressure and attention LeBron and Luka are going to get from the defenses, that's going to open up things for their teammates. Guys like Hachimura, Austin Reeves, their job got a lot easier because we know where the focus of the defense is going to be. And it's going to make LeBron's life easier, too, because Luka draws so much attention. But LeBron was kind of on a hot mic telling Luka to be himself.
Luka, be yourself. Don't fit in. Fit the out. Be yourself. Here we go. Dominate. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Be yourself. Be yourself. Now, Luka, after the game, talked about that message from LeBron.
Like I said before, it's special. For him to say something like that just feels amazing, give me confidence. And, after that speech, it was chills. So I was just happy to be part of it.
And Luka also talked about his first game, his thoughts on the first game in a Laker uniform.
Being special, the way they received me, everybody, it was amazing to see. I was a little nervous before. I remember it was the last time I was nervous before the game. So, but once I stepped on the court, it was fun. And just being out there again felt amazing.
And he also talked about what it was like playing with Bron.
I mean, it's special. He sees the game in a different way than a lot of people. And his IQ is insane. And just, have 2 guys like that on court, I think it's going to help the whole team out.
Now, I think it's got to be cool for Luka because I think he is LeBron's favorite player in the league. So LeBron respects his game. And that's got to be pretty sweet for Luka to be respected by LeBron. Now, he was also asked something interesting, but he was the last guy who was announced in the starting lineup, and he was asked about that whole situation.
Being introduced last, when did you know that was going to happen? What was your reaction to it? And what did you think about the fact that LeBron sort of gave you that honor?
Yeah, he texted me in the morning. He said, whatever you want. And I said, for him to text me that is just amazing. So shows what kind of person he is. And, he let me have my moment. So I really appreciate it.
So he said, it's your choice? Or, when you say whatever you want,
Yeah, he said it, whatever you want. He texted me whatever you want.
And so what did you text back?
Yeah, today, if he can let me be this one. But from now on, he'll be the last.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool for LeBron to do that. Luka had his moment, and that's got to feel pretty cool for Luka to be embraced by that fan base after being run out of town in Dallas. Now, I don't know for sure because I don't know Luka personally, but I do know that great athletes, most of them share a similar DNA type, meaning when any of them get questioned or doubted or they feel slighted, that usually motivates them. I mean, we learned that through the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan. He would conjure up things in his dome that he perceived to be a slight towards him, and he would use it as motivation. Imagine the motivation that MJ would have if someone suggested he were fat back in the day and that he wasn't really bought into the team concept. That would have fueled him for a year straight, just on the bitterness that someone would think that. So my guess would be that Luka, now in a Laker uniform, is going to have more motivation than he's ever had before. One, to showcase that he is one of the 3 best players in the world, which he is. And 2, my guess would be that his conditioning, we're going to see a ramp up in that department. One, because he's been questioned and people are making fun of him. At least some are. The majority of Maverick fans want him back and hate the fact that Nico traded him. But there are people throwing him under the bus from within the organization. So I would like to think that that's going to power him to, focus on conditioning a little bit more. Now, who am I to criticize his conditioning? He's been one of the most dominant basketball players ever since he hit the scene. So maybe being a little bit smoother or a little bit fatter is not hurting his game that much. He just carried a team to the finals last year. So it's probably just a little bit of nitpicking, but he'll probably ramp up the conditioning. And I would guess when you're around someone like LeBron, and the one thing you can say about LeBron, say whatever you want. And I'm not a big LeBron fan. What he has done with his body over the last 20 years is remarkable. The conditioning, his physique, the way he continues to ball out in his 40s, he's a miracle. Whatever he's doing to keep himself in tip-top shape is truly amazing. I admire it a great deal because there's a lot of work that goes into that. A lot of expense, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of work to be able to function at a high level at that on that stage against that type of competition on a nightly basis when you're 40 years old is unbelievable. So you get around someone like that, that's going to provide a little extra motivation too. So you got people slighting you within the organization. You got a chance to come back and redesign yourself. And now you get a chance to play on that stage in front of those fans who are going to embrace him. I don't feel like the Laker fans have ever truly embraced LeBron because it was too soon to Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant was a Laker for life. So I don't really feel like LeBron has ever really found a home there in LA because there's been so many great players to come before him, but Kobe was an absolute legend with the Lakers. But they'll embrace Luka. 100% embrace him. And that's a town, too. I think a lot of times where you live and the type of weather that you have and the type of lifestyle it promotes can be very helpful as well. When you're in LA around a bunch of beautiful people and it's sun shining all the time, warm temperatures, I think that motivates a person to maybe have a little more exposure to the sun, to have a little more movement, to keep yourself in better shape. I just find it hard to believe that someone as ultra competitive as Luka doesn't care. I don't buy it. So my guess will be the Luka we're going to see over the next 2 or 3 years in LA with the Lakers is going to be a really good Luka. And not only that, but you got a franchise like the Mavs who are throwing you under the bus. What better way to get back at them than be in the best shape possible and be dominant and just continue to ball out? And then you can give the double barrel to the franchise without giving them the double barrel. You do it with your play and your conditioning to show them that they're as dumb as we think they are. That Nico Harrison, we thought it was the worst when he blew that presentation with Nike in front of Steph Curry, and Steph went to Under Armour. But it come to find out that wasn't his biggest mistake. Trading Luka to the Lakers was. All right, when we come back, we'll talk football. Brian Noe on the road. We'll talk Super Bowl 59. We'll get his take on the Chiefs getting demolished by the Eagles. And then Kerry Ager is going to swing by at 5:20. We have Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers, coming up at 5 o'clock. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. right, time to talk some ball. My man, Brian Noe from Fox Sports Radio. He's on the road somewhere today, so Shacker and I have no idea where he's going. Now, Shacker, before we bring up Brian Noe, what were some of the potential locations we came up with? Mexico, maybe he's going back home with his girlfriend.
Driving through the desert from Vegas to L.A. or somewhere from Vegas, maybe driving east from there. My other guess was between Indiana and Chicago.
Okay.
My third guess is maybe he's in Canada right now. He's doing like a Canada trip.
Okay.
That he didn't tell you about.
All right, well, let's bring on Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio right now. Bino, where are you on your way to right now, buddy?
What is going on, Chad? Doing? I am beginning the grand voyage back to South Bend, Indiana, kind of like a good news, bad news thing. I was moving some of my furniture, but my uncle Jerry passed away yesterday, sadly. So, I don't know. I might have to kind of change the trip where all that stuff is maybe on Monday and Tuesday. So, it's partly moving stuff and then partly an elongated trip because of unforeseen circumstances. But he was an awesome dude, huge car guy. Chad, he built some cars. You would love this over the years, like by hand, like built them from scratch. And man, he had some beautiful rides over the years, but he beat cancer. He was in his early 80s and it was unexpected, but didn't suffer. So that's partially what's going on with me right now.
Okay, well, that makes sense, and I'm sorry to hear about the passing of your Uncle Larry. But you know what's cool? Like, I'm close with both of my uncles. My Uncle Truman, who lives down in southern Oklahoma, close to Dallas, and my Uncle Gordon, who lives in Colorado Springs, and I still keep in touch and have good relationships with both of them. And I think it's cool how different members of the family, like, you can develop a connection with and have a great relationship, and they contribute to your life. And it sounds like Larry was one of those guys for you.
Yeah, well, Uncle Jerry, and he was awesome, man. He was, and born in South Bend, still lived in South Bend, and it's crazy because my young nephew Ty, he's getting married. Can you believe that, Chad?
Gosh,
he's
no
getting
way.
married. I know, on March 1st, and so that's the sad part. Is I was hoping to see Uncle Jerry there at the wedding, and man, you just never know. That's the thing is. Yeah, I don't want to be too somber, but it really is. You got to make the most out of every day and every time you get to see your loved ones because you just don't know, man. And we did. I don't have any regrets, but it's just sad that the finality of it. But, hey, man, that's life, You just got to make the most of it while you're around.
Yeah, no question about it. And I'm sorry for disrespecting your uncle by calling him Larry. Uncle Jerry. Jeez.
Yeah. No, it's all right, man. It's sports radio. How many times have been like, hey, let's go out to Bob on line 1. Actually, my name is, Yosemite. Oh, sorry, Yosemite. Sorry, Bob sounds close to Yosemite. My bad on that one. So all good, man. No worries at all.
Well, I can picture him in heaven right now looking down on this conversation saying, no, excuse me, sir, my name is Jerry. That's great, man.
Yeah, it's like, who's this Chad doing jackass? That's what Uncle Jerry's saying right now.
That's so good. Well, I tell you what, I did not have the Chiefs having less yardage than the Eagles did points at halftime of Super Bowl 59. That dominance was pretty stunning, Brian.
Dude, how crazy is that, Chad? It's like, look, I give Philly's D-line a ton of credit because they were fantastic. But listen, man, I don't know what happened to our guy Mahomes, especially in the first half. That was as drunk as I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play football. And yes, there was a lot of pressure on him, like in terms of the Philly D-line, maybe additional pressure going for a three-peat or all the talk about going head-to-head with Tom Brady in the GOAT conversation. I don't know what it was. But I know that's not Patrick Mahomes in the first half. There were a couple of throws. The pick six, Chad, no pressure on him at all. That was not Philly's D-line. That was all on Mahomes forcing a throw and trying to make something happen. And all of a sudden, 10-0 turns into 17-0. And that was it, man. And then earlier than that, it's 3rd and 3. Travis Kelce's wide open for an easy first down. The ball's at his feet. It's like even when DeAndre Hopkins was wide open before halftime. a catchable ball, but that was not a good pass by Mahomes at all. I don't know what happened to Mahomes. It was like the Tom Brady commercial where the batteries in his forearm had to be replaced, right? Like, that's how Mahomes played in the first half. That was ridiculous, Chad. And as a Broncos fan, you've seen this guy time and time again dice up not just the Broncos, but pretty much anybody else in his way. And like you said, 24 points for the Eagles in the first half, 14 yards for the Chiefs. That was amazing.
It truly was. And a great reminder that no matter how great of a quarterback you are, I guess the rule of thumb is if you can get a lot of pressure on any quarterback, you can make them look very mortal. And I was just surprised. I thought the first pick on the pick six was bad, and then he got picked off right inside of his own 10, and I was like, wow. Like that one, the second throw was particularly bad, but it was almost like he wasn't anticipating that type of pressure, and it came fast and furious, and he was just uncomfortable, and his footwork was off. Like, they just threw him off his game completely. I've never seen anything like it because he's almost like Michael Jordan from the standpoint that in big moments, you never see him fall flat on his face like we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing to me, too. The first thing I think of based on what you're saying is I thought of Nikola Jokic randomly, where no one can speed Jokic up. You know what I mean? Like, he just plays at his speed. But football is different. You get smacked in the mouth a couple of times as a quarterback, and it does speed you up. The counter to that, though, is if you go back to Super Bowl 55 when the Chiefs lost to Tampa, KC didn't have their offensive tackles in that game, and Mahomes was running for his life all game long, and he took some punishment, but he played great. If you look at Mahomes under pressure against Tampa in the Super Bowl compared to Mahomes under pressure against the Eagles this last Sunday, it was night and day. So Mahomes has gotten hit and he's gotten sped up before, and he still thrived and played great football. So I'm at a loss, man. I don't know what happened to Mahomes because that was an imposter, especially in the first half. That was like some Carson Wentz, after the knee injury type stuff. That was not Mahomes at all, and I don't have a good explanation why we saw that guy in the first half.
Yeah, the other stat that blew me away, no blitzes the entire game by Vic Fangio.
I know it, and 6 sacks. How do you get 6 sacks and no blitzes? It reminded me of Super Bowl 42, Chad, where you look at that Giants D-line and all the pressure they got on Brady. In Super Bowl 42, Patriots were undefeated, and all of a sudden, as they were a machine all season long, and they scored 14 points, and you're just like, wow, that's what pressure can do. That's what a front four can do when they're getting after you and just wrecking play after play. And really, that's what the Eagles did, man. I give them credit.
It's interesting. I was hosting the party down at Spirit Mountain, and I always talk to the sportsbook manager before big games because I want to know what side he's on. Like, who does he want to win, right? And he was a big Eagle fan on Sunday because a lot of money had come in on the Chiefs, especially when you are in a casino or a tribal casino. They tend to support the Kansas City Chiefs for obvious reasons. So they had a bunch of money on Kansas City. So he was pulling for Philly. And I said, well, how do you feel about the game? And he goes, well, I'm really nervous, but I did talk to Mr. Vaccaro down in Vegas, and he had gotten word that they had a few sharps come in and put big wagers on the Eagles. And he also heard that Billy Walters was on the Eagles as well. So he goes, when I heard that information, I feel a little bit better. And so I kept that in the back of my mind as I was watching the game play out. But I guess what I'm upset about with myself and my prediction, Brian, is when you and I talked about this last week, we both admitted that the Eagles were capable of winning the game, and we both admitted that they had the best roster in football and were dominant at the line of scrimmage. They had the best defense. I don't know why. I guess I got sucked into Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes because I thought it would be a one-possession game. But in our lifetime, Brian, in these big Super Bowls, the team with the best, defense and the team that's the most dominant at the line of scrimmage, they almost always win the Super Bowls. We've seen it time and time again. Even if you've got the best offense and the best quarterback, the team that plays the best defense and moves bodies at the line of scrimmage normally wins, and yet we got sucked in.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, it always makes more sense after the fact, and I totally understand what you're saying. I told you, I initially wanted to take Philly because they do have the better roster. They've got the better roster, more talent top to bottom. But any time I was about to bet on the Eagles, I'm like, man, I'm fading Mahomes and Andy Reid and Spags, and I'm backing Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. And the other main thing that I kept going to was the Chiefs, a couple of reasons, but the Chiefs just don't beat themselves. The Eagles were fully capable of beating Kansas City, but I was convinced they're going to have to earn it. They're going to have to beat Kansas City, which is easier said than done because Kansas City, they are supremely confident because of their past. They're like Robert Ory. You remember when Robert Ory would hit a big shot, and then he was even more confident and hit another big shot and another big shot, and he's just like, this is what I do. That's what the Chiefs are. That's their whole belief and mindset, and they do such a great job of maximizing opportunities. You give them 5 yards, they're going to take 5 yards. You give them 7 yards, they're going to take 7 yards. You make a mistake, they're going to capitalize on that. And so I'm not really kicking myself for taking KC. The one thing that blows my mind is that Kansas City, time and time again, they beat themselves. And that's not to take any credit away from the Eagles because the Eagles might have beaten them anyway. They might have beaten them by double digits without Kansas City shooting themselves in the foot. But the one thing I kept hanging my hat on was KC just does not screw themselves. And they did time and time again in that Super Bowl. And that's one of those things where you have to just shrug your shoulders and say, wow, I'm shocked by that. And you keep moving on. But I'm not just absolutely kicking myself. How can you kick yourself for betting on a team that was going for a three-peat as decorated as Mahomes and Reid and Spags? I'm just not going to kick myself over that.
Yeah, so the big question now, this is what I'm curious about with the Chiefs. You know, how do they continue to draft and develop as they move forward? Because some of their stars around Mahomes will continue to age, and they're going to have to replace those guys. And I'm anxious to see how Andy Reid handles that adjustment period.
Yeah, me too. And there's going to be a lot of change over the next decade or so, however long Mahomes stays there in KC, and you would expect he's probably going to be there that long. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of change. And Mahomes, I needed a few more passing attempts from him, and I needed more from Kelsey, you know, and I'm not kicking myself for that either. How often can you say, well, Kelsey was open and Mahomes just threw it at his feet? You know, like, when does that ever happen? But you're right. Moving on from Kelsey, maybe he's got another year left or so, right? Andy Reid isn't going to coach forever. Spags isn't going to coach forever. And so you're going to see that supporting cast change an awful lot over the years to come. But I'm not selling my Mahomes stock. That was an absolute stinker from him. But that guy is still such a special quarterback and a special talent. I'm certainly not selling my stock with KC in that division or that conference or the league in general, man. There's still going to be a problem year in and year out.
Oh, there's no question about it. Mahomes is the real deal, and he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And, you know, the Chiefs, as long as they've got him, they'll be right there in the mix. But for Philadelphia, with the youth on their roster and some of the talent they have at the key positions, you know, at least for the next couple of years, they should be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, they should be. Saquon Barkley, my gosh. That's the scary thing for the Eagles. As great of a year as he had a pretty quiet Super Bowl, you know? Like Kansas City giving up 57 rushing yards. You take that all day. He made his presence known as a receiving threat out of the backfield, but he didn't kill the Chiefs at all. And they still scored 40. You know, some of that was partially the pick six and the other interception setting up another score. The fumble helped, but their offense, Jalen Hurts throws over 200 yards. You know, Devontae Smith had that deep ball catch. A.J. Brown had a touchdown. They've got weapons, man. They've got arguably the best offensive line in football. And with Saquon coming back and those receiving threats, Jalen Hurts played really, really well. You got a lot there. So, yeah, I think the Eagles are going to be one of those teams in the NFC right there with the Lions. Man, the Niners have really come back to the pack. Be interesting to see what they do this next season. Those teams in the NFC North, it's still, there's some tough teams in the NFC, but there's no doubt that Philly is going to be one of those squads. They're going to be a tough out for some years to come, I believe.
What did you think about the halftime show?
My thing is, I'm pretty eclectic, Chad. You know, I love metal, but I love rap too, and there are a lot of Kendrick songs that I enjoy. My whole thing is I just can't do the lip syncing, man. I don't care if it's rapping, singing. I want to hear someone rap or sing. I don't want to hear a recording and your lips moving like 5 seconds off of the audio coming out, man. I don't care about choreography. I don't care if you're dancing with the same steps and it aligns perfectly with the background dancers. I care how you perform while rapping or singing. And so I just absolutely tune out anytime I can tell someone is lip syncing. And you could tell that was the case. That was my main beef. It wasn't the genre of music, the song. It was the lip syncing, man. I just can't get over that no matter what form of music it is.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. Give me the legit music with the performer actually performing right there instead of the lip syncing stuff. It drives me crazy. I did want to mention, too, you had, by the way, it was crazy to see Luka on the floor last night with LeBron, but you had mentioned Jokic earlier in the conversation. He annihilated Portland last night with 40 points, 8 boards, 7 assists in 3 quarters of work. So the game was over after 3 quarters. Jokic, went to the bench and chilled. And I was watching him last night, and I'm resistant to embracing some of the new basketball players because I'm so partial to my guys growing up like MJ and Larry Bird and Magic and those guys. But I was watching Jokic last night, and I finally fully embraced him. You're so right about him playing his own speed. Like, he didn't look sped up. He's so patient with how he moves, his vision, his awareness, and he can do everything for a guy of his size. He's got the handle of a guard, and he's got the body of a classic big man center, back in like the late 80s, early 90s. I just respect him such a great deal, man, and with the way he plays. He is truly one of the greats.
He really is, man. That guy, wow. And he does everything, offensively. There's really no answer for him because, man, you look at Klingon, who's got size on Jokic, and Ayton is a good rim protector. And Jokic, he's like the guy at the YMCA, he just has that game where he's got such a feel. He knows angles. He can distribute. And when he's like, okay, it looks like scoring is the best option on this play. I'm going to be the scorer. And he'll just take his time and use his body and use angles, and it's a little baby hook like 2 feet away from the rim. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. And he's unbelievable, man. He has such a great feel and so much skill. And he's not like Mr. Olympia, you know what I mean? Like, he's pretty doughy, and he's just unstoppable. He's just so good. With that being said, it's going to be a little bit of a Lamar, Josh Allen thing in terms of MVP. SGA is going to win it, and he's had a sensational season. But it's one of those deals where if SGA had a couple of MVPs and Jokic was yet to win one, Jokic would be the MVP this season. But I don't know. People get tired of giving it to the same guy, so it's going to go to SGA, who is magnificent. But, man, I was watching that game last night, and as good as the Blazers have played, and they played some really good basketball, going on the road against Denver, the way they play offense, that's just a different task right now.
Well, there's no question about it. All right, Bino, hey, safe travels back home, and go and celebrate the life of Uncle Jerry. And I'm glad we had a chance to catch up, buddy.
Absolutely, man. Always good being with you, Chad Doing. And I almost trolled you yesterday. I almost texted you when your guy Lawrence Tanter, he announced Luka there. I'm like, man, this is such a special moment. If they didn't have a hack PA guy, this would be even better. But I resisted because I know that's your guy right there.
He is my guy, and it's so funny you bring that up, and it shows you the type of memory you have. I praised Lawrence Tanter at the top of the show because we had Luka being introduced in the open of the program today. And one of my dreams is to walk out on the floor and have Lawrence Tanter introduce me with the way he says my name. I can't wait for that day to happen.
It's going to be like one of the battle balls competitions or something like that. And in the blue corner, Chad Doing. Yeah, maybe one day, man. I like that dream by you, Chad, but always good being with you, buddy. I hope you have a great night.
All right, safe travels. There's Bino, Fox Sports Radio, as he makes his way back home. And don't talk bad about Lawrence Tanter, man. That guy's a classic.
And the other guard wears number 77. 6'7", 7th campaign from Slovenia, Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I love that voice. I love Lawrence Tanter. Shame on you, Brian No. All right, Kerry Agers, the Dean of Portland Sports, coming up at 5:20. We got Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday at 5. We have a pair of tickets for Luka Doncic, and the LA Lakers coming up on February 20th at Moda Center, courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers. We do it at 5. The principal, Curtis Long, has reached out, and he's like, hey, nobody disses on Lawrence Tanter. And the principal would know because he does PA work. He fills in when Mark Mason is out. Yeah, Lawrence Tanter, the PA guy for the Lakers, is my favorite, and he's been doing it for years. Smooth, smooth, smooth. And Mark Mason's great. Mark Mason does a terrific job. He's great with his voice. But those are the things I really paid attention to when I was younger. I love the game, but I was into, the broadcasting and the way they covered a game, the PA guy, the whole package, the entire thing. It was awesome. Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, so Luka made his debut last night. We heard from him. He's going to be in town on February 20th. We're going to give away a pair of tickets for that game coming up at 5 with Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. And then Kerry Agers, the Dean of Portland Sports, is going to talk at 5:20. He'll be in studio, and he's going to share input or insight on his new project. He's putting together I guess it's kind of like it's a greatest hits book. What he's doing is going through all of the stories he's written, and he's going to piece together a book with his greatest hits with all these different stories in it, and he'll write a preface for each one. Kind of sharing his thoughts on the story, the situation behind it, and the whole shebang. And that's going to be cool because it'll be like a written record. So you'll be able to flip through and remember some of the great stories over the past, 50 years that he's been covering sports. It's pretty crazy to think about. He got his job at the Journal when I was born, 1975. That's how long Kerry Agers has been doing it. So he'll join us, and we'll get his take on the project. But that would be a fun book to put together. I'm also going to suggest to him that he put pictures in the book of all of his different press passes for the many different events he's covered. I think he's pretty much kept them all. And that's what I've been told. So Kerry Agers coming up at 5:20, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday at 5. And then tomorrow, final game before the All-Star break. So the Trailblazers, tomorrow is the 12th? Is tomorrow the 12th? Oh, so that's a Thursday night game. Yeah, so the Lakers are in town a week from Thursday. So the first game after the All-Star break will be the Laker game. Portland will play one more final game tomorrow night in Denver against the Nuggets. Now, hopefully they have better success tomorrow night than they did last night. What a demolition job that was by the Nugs. Jokic was amazing. 40 points after 3 quarters. Game over. 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 15 of 22 shooting. He put on a clinic out there. He's so good. I've just learned to respect him. I just tip the cap. You tip the cap and say, good for you, partner. Jokic is truly one of the best. And he makes it look easy. And Brian knows right. That's a guy that plays at his own speed. You cannot speed up Jokic. He just plays the game at his pace, at his speed, and he knows what to do. And he's got great vision, great awareness, high IQ, and he makes players around him better. Much like Luka. Why wouldn't you want that guy in your franchise? Still can't believe the Mavs traded him. Oh, my gosh, that was a bad move. That was a bad, bad move, and now AD is out for an extended period of time. They have him on some type of precautionary rehab assignment to hopefully get his body right. I'm just like, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? Oh, my goodness. So glad I'm not a Mavs fan right now. Kellen Moore is now the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. The Cowboys probably could have had a chance to hire him, but they screwed that up. So Kellen Moore is going to take over for the Saints. Curious to see what he can do. And now we move into an offseason without football for the next 6 months. We'll have the draft. We'll have spring football. But this is a very difficult period for all of us. 6 months without football. I get so geared up and so geeked for football. And I actually get sad when the Super Bowl is over because I know that we have to go through a down period. So what do we got now? March Madness. You know how the sports calendar works. We'll have March Madness coming up. Baseball season will kick off. NFL draft. And then we'll get the NBA finals and then football season. So that's kind of the process from here.
College baseball starts Friday. UFL starts next month.
Oh, the UFL. Yeah, of course. Shacker watches all sports, and I mean all sports. He'll be watching the United Football League. So the UFL kicks off. Yeah, the Beavers, their first series is this weekend, right?
That is correct. College softball started last weekend.
And we'll see if the Oklahoma Sooners can defend their national championship from last year when they beat Texas. So that's where we're at. We'll see how the offseason goes. For the Chiefs, my big question mark for them is just they're going to be fine. You got Patrick Mahomes, you're in a good spot. If you have Patrick Mahomes, you'll contend every year. And with Andy Reid, they're right there in a position to get back. But I want to see how they handle the next few years. How will they do with draft and development? The New England Patriots with Belichick and Brady went through a long dry spell between Super Bowls. And I want to see how the Chiefs adjust with some of their aging superstars and continue to draft and develop and put the right players around Patrick Mahomes. For the Eagles, they're in a position now where they can make a run at it for the next couple of years. Before guys start wanting to get paid, contracts come up, they've got a chance to make some deep runs over the next 2 years. And they're in a good position because they've drafted well, they develop well, and Howie Roseman does a heck of a job. That's a very well-run organization. And for Vic Fangio, I'm happy for him. He's been grinding in the NFL for a long time. He was head coach of the Broncos for a couple of years, but I was happy for him. But that team, with their strength at the line of scrimmage, with the way they've drafted and developed on the offensive and defensive lines, they're going to be right there in a position to make things happen. And Jalen Hurts will only get better from here with more confidence. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Coming up next, we'll get to Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, your chance to see the Lakers and Luka at Moda Center on February 20th. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday is next. All right, what's going on? 5 o'clock chat here. We start with your Trailblazers. Got whacked last night in Denver, 146-117. Jokic, 40 points through three quarters. The Nuggets shot better than 60%. The bright spot for Portland, though, rookie Donovan Clingan scored a career-high 21. He was a perfect 8 for 8 from the field, and he also grabbed 7 rebounds after the game. Chauncey Billups talked about his play.
He was aggressive. I thought even defensively he did a pretty good job in a nightmare matchup, obviously. Man, he finished the ball very well. I thought he passed it pretty well. It was just a really good game for DC.
Trailblazers and Nuggets rematch tomorrow night in Denver. Tip-off at 6. We start our coverage with Game Day, hosted by Chris Burkhardt at 4. Elsewhere, Brandon Ingram agrees to a 3-year extension with the Raptors. Alex Len is signed with the Lakers. Kellen Moore is leaving Philly, is now the head coach of the Saints, and the Dodgers and Clayton Kershaw have agreed on a new deal. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up next on the Rip City Drive. All right, your chance at Trailblazer tickets coming up in just a moment. We have a pair of tickets to give away for the Lakers and the Trailblazers coming up on February 20th. That's a week from Thursday, and that will be the first game following the All-Star break. And what will be great is that Luka Doncic is now in a Laker uniform. He played last night, made his debut. And he loved it, having a chance to be out there with LeBron. And LeBron told him before the game, Luka, be yourself.
Luka, be yourself. Don't fit in, fit out. Be yourself. Here we go. Dominate. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Yeah, be yourself. Be your bleeping self, Luka. And after the game, Luka talked about what it was like having LeBron tell him to be himself.
Like I said before, it's special. For him to say something like that just feels amazing, give me confidence. And, after that speech, it was chills. So I was just happy to be part of it.
All right. So that's the game. February 20th, we got a pair of tickets. We'll give those away in just a second. Now, last night, rough night for the Trailblazers in Denver. They got worked 146-117. Not ideal. The Nuggets were on fire. They shot better than 60%. The Portland defense couldn't come up with stops. It was an offensive-type game, and Jokic dominated 40 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, and 3 quarters of work. And he connected on 15 of his 22 shots. As I was watching him play last night, all I could think about was Larry Bird. The way he moves, he plays slow and deliberate, great vision. He makes his teammates better. He made some terrific passes. He's got the entire package. But it's unfair because he's got the size of a classic big man in the middle who handles like a guard. And he's got the shooting touch to hit from anywhere on the field. There's nothing he can't do. He's great. It took me a while to get to that point where I can admit it, but Nikola Jokic is awesome. He really is. One of the all-time greats already. I admire his game, the way he plays, and his mindset is geared towards doing whatever it takes for his team to have success. Meaning his stat line may look a little bit different night to night because he'll do whatever is necessary for his team to win. He's exactly what you want as a basketball player. But I really appreciate the feel for the game. I shared this earlier, but I heard this interview with Michael Cooper, who was a terrific defender during his time with the Showtime Lakers. Legendary defender. In fact, Larry Bird has said that he will go to his grave knowing that Michael Cooper was the best to ever defend him. That's high praise coming from a guy like Bird. But what Cooper said about Bird and what made him so tough, and this reminded me of Jokic last night, he said that a lot of star players, and he played against good ones, like MJ, when they would pass the ball, a lot of them would stand still or stay in one spot to catch a breather. But the problem with Bird is that once he passed it, he was on the move, either to, flow with inside the offense to get to another part on the floor and look to score, or he was moving to set a pick on someone. Like, you had to keep your eyes on him at all times and be aware of what he was doing. And Jokic is the same way. He's always moving, and he's always doing different things on the floor to impact the game. So if you're defending him, especially if you're Donovan Clingan on the floor and you're trying to defend him, and he can do all those different things, including run the pick and roll way out on top, away from the basket, it's not normal for bigs to be able to do that. So when you're trying to defend him, he just takes you out of your comfort zone. But Donovan Clingan was terrific last night. 8 of 8, 21 points, 7 rebounds. His best game offensively in his rookie season. And Coach Billups, after the game, was asked about Klingen's play. Here's what Coach had to say.
I loved it. I thought DC was just obviously a career high for him. He was aggressive. I thought even defensively he did a pretty good job in a nightmare matchup, obviously. But man, he finished the ball very well. I thought he passed it pretty well. It was just a really good game for DC. Really good game.
No question. Now the other point that was brought up to Coach Billups was this idea of a rookie like Klingan getting a chance to get some education on the floor and playing up and going up against a guy like Jokic, the best in the NBA, the MVP. How good of a process is that for a young player to compete against players like Nikola Jokic?
It is. I mean, this is a part of the young guys' development. I always because it's how I grew up in the league. You young guys, that's a part of it. You got to know what that feels like to guard the best, player in the league. Sometimes without help and without coverage, you need to see what that feels like if you're going to be a dominant defender in the league. These are these tough lessons that you need to learn, So while they are maybe painful, trust me, he'll remember it. We get to do it again on Wednesday. I thought he did a pretty good job on him the last time as well. I really did. And I thought he was cool. I mean, there's just so much that comes with that. I mean, fives don't usually run pick and roll as the ball handler. You're asking my fives to get through pick and rolls or get under pick and coverage and pick and it's a tall order when they're used to playing on the other side of that pick. So I thought he did a good job in both nights, and obviously, you look down and Joker's 48 and 7 and 3/4 in 30 minutes. So I didn't think he could miss a shot either. I mean, that was crazy.
It was crazy. Jokic was crazy, but that's cool to see from Donovan Clingan. So my big takeaway from the game last night, not a good game for Portland. Their defense got shredded by the Nuggets. That'll happen sometimes. I also looked it up. I think now the Blazers, going into the game, they were 30-69 lifetime in Denver. After last night's loss, 30-70. So it's fourth on the list. The worst road place for Portland in their history is Utah, followed by Milwaukee, followed by Phoenix, followed by Denver. And I think number 5 on the list was Seattle and Oklahoma City, the Sonics franchise. Those are your top 5 worst road trips for Portland in their franchise history. And Denver's tough. Interesting that 2 of the top 5 are both played at altitude in Utah and Denver. So there you have it. Utah's the worst. Denver is 4th on the list. But they'll get a chance to rematch tomorrow, and we'll see how the Blazers adjust and what they can do. But here's my big takeaway, that regardless of the winning streak and the 10 out of 11, it was fun. And you want to see that type of growth, from the young guys as they come together where you produce results on the floor. But my big takeaway continues to be the development of the young players. And this is what I think Coach Billups and his staff have done the best job of, is bringing those players along. And I think the optimism moving forward now is that they have 5 guys that are going to be a part of the future. Scoot's turned a corner. He's been great over the last month. Shaedon Sharpe has shown flashes, and he's had a positive response to being benched for his defense. Coach Billups is holding guys accountable. Klingan, in limited minutes that he's played so far this year, has been very productive and shown a propensity to know how to get after the block shots. Good rebounder. And then you've got the 2 dynamos at forward, Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara, who have been great, the 2 MVPs of the team. And those guys all 5 will get a chance to continue to play more down the stretch. And now that they've got 5 good pieces to work with as they continue to move forward. And that's pretty exciting because, with the vets they have that will eventually get moved, and they're going to have a pretty decent draft pick coming up in this year's draft, they'll have more to be able to add to it. But you can see the makings of something now with the young group that they have. And that excites me. And we'll see how things shake out tomorrow. Can the Blazers muster up a good effort the last game before the All-Star break against Denver in a very tough building to play? And hopefully the Nuggets won't shoot 60+% in tomorrow night's game. All right, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. As you know, we give away tickets every Tuesday on the show. courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers. And for all of your Trailblazer ticket needs, simply go to trailblazers.com. We have tickets for every game. And so every Tuesday, we give away tickets to an upcoming game. This just happens to be the day that we give away tickets for the Lakers. Now, maybe a few weeks ago, this game was like, okay, we get to see LeBron. But now it takes on a whole new meaning because you get Luka and LeBron in the first game after the All-Star break. Luka and LeBron. That's pretty awesome. So we're going to keep it simple today. I was thinking about making it in honor of Luka Doncic and have the 77th caller call in to get the tickets. Should I do that, Shaq, or is that too much?
No, any number works.
Any number works.
Make it big.
All right. All right. If you want a pair of tickets for the Lakers and Blazers at Moda Center coming up on February 20th, a week from Thursday, we will take caller 77 right now in honor of Luka Doncic. He might be fat, but we're down with Luka here on the show. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Caller 77 in honor of Luka will get a pair of tickets for the Lakers and Trailblazers February 20th. Fire away. I want to hear from Luka, from a Luka fan. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Do you like fat? I want to hear from a fat NBA player. Nico Harrison is banned from winning the tickets to this game because he traded Luka. Sorry, Nico. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. When we come back, the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Eggers, is going to join me. And we'll talk about his new project, this greatest hits book he's putting together. 503-248-0620. Fire away, caller 77. I don't know what Shacker's on right now. Maybe caller 5 or 6. He'll get there eventually. Caller 77 gets a pair of tickets for the Lakers and Blazers February 20th at Moda Center. The Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Eggers, is next. All right, it's always a pleasure when I can welcome a very good friend of mine into studio. And I got to set this up for those of you who don't know. But for me, who got into this business roughly about 25 years ago and then full-time, almost 17 years now, I had a chance to meet some people that I had grown up listening to or reading in the papers and online. And so I had a chance to make friends with some guys, and I cherish those relationships. And two of those guys who are the most important to me are Dwight Jaynes, as you know, the Godfather, and this gentleman right here, the Dean of Portland Sports, Kerry Agers. And you can check him out online with his website, kerryagers.com. And Kerry, it's great to see you. You were kind enough to ask me if I could get together for lunch, and so we did. And I said, well, Kerry, if you got enough time, why don't you swing in the studio? And you did. So here we are. We get a chance to catch up. It's great to see you, buddy.
Well, thank you. Always have time for you, Chad, and thanks for bringing an old-timer into your studio.
So how have things been going? Because you are now getting a chance to sit back and enjoy retired life to a degree, but you're also very busy with your website, kerryagers.com, and I can just tell you as someone that reads it, it looks like you're getting the freedom to pick and choose what you want to focus on. And so when I'm reading you, I'm like, Kerry's enjoying what he's doing right now. What's the experience been like with the website to pursue the things that you care about?
Yeah, I really am enjoying it, Chad. It's a little busier than I thought it would be. I didn't know how many stories I'd post, but I kind of try to fill the cracks maybe where there's a need for some information about a certain thing, or there's a lot of interest in another thing. Also, just the things that I'm interested in. And I frankly, I've done very little Blazers. I think I went to one game this year. I've done 2 or 3 stories. That's pretty well covered. But other things that I've enjoyed, I do a lot of Oregon State sports. I went down yesterday. There's a young man named Trayvon Minot, who is a center for Portland State, and he's a really interesting young man. He's a Canadian. He plays 7 or 8 instruments. He's all of a sudden one of their best players. So I did an in-depth piece on him that's going to post this week. I just did a couple of stories on Oregon State baseball. That one that was posted yesterday with Joey Wong, the assistant coach. Joey talked about the hitters and the position players. Tomorrow I've got a story posted with Rich Dorman, the pitching coach. Beavers start on Friday, their season down in Surprise. So those are just some examples of some stuff I've done recently.
Do you think they're pleased with the schedule they were able to put together as an independent now and outside of the conference?
Well, I think he did about as good as you can. They're going to play only 20 home games, which is fewer than they played, I'm sure, in a long time. But it's hard to get people in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Most people are affiliated with the conference, right? So I think they did a pretty good job of getting – they'll have a chance to win enough games and get their RPI enough up against good competition that by the end of the season, they should be in line. They think they're going to be in line to hopefully host some regional and super regional.
All right, so how many years total have you covered sports now? What is it, like 40 plus, 50 plus? How many years?
1975, so it'd be 50. That's when I started at the Oregon Journal, the day after I graduated, Chad, from Oregon State.
You started working at the Oregon Journal the year I was born. That's amazing. But the reason why I asked the question is what I've noticed in my time covering sports is I've always been a sports fan like you, but I find that I go through phases where different sports are my favorites, right? So I've had periods where the NBA was absolutely my number one, and I couldn't get enough of it. I've had times where the NFL was my absolute number one. And over the last couple of years, college football has been my number one in terms of passion and things I really like to dive into. Do you notice that too, where it kind of switches back and forth based on what's going on in different sports with where your interests are peaked?
Absolutely. For a long time, it was the NBA, and when I covered them in the 90s, that was definitely number one. Then college football became number one. Now I'm much more down on college sports than I've ever been because of the transfer portal and the NIL. So I don't know what my favorite is now. I'm just trying to negotiate in my mind where college sports is going to go, and I'm just so disappointed, Chad, in the NIL and the transfer portal. It's just absolutely obliterated things, and it's gotten way, way out of hand.
I don't think anyone really knows where it's going to go because the adults in charge certainly don't, right?
Yeah, who are the adults in charge?
We have no idea.
Yeah.
It's not the NCAA.
No.
It's really messy. Oh, by the way, did I see you? I think you might have been at a Blazer game the other night as a fan. Were you there with Mike Riley?
I was,
yeah. Did he have a good time?
Oh, he loved it. Yeah, we saw the Pacers game, and he really likes the NBA, and he's a big Mavericks fan, and he and I both like watching Luka Doncic. So That's one of the big areas of our discussion over the last week.
How insane was that trade?
I could not believe. I've been following the NBA for 35, almost 40 years, and that's about the most surprising one I've seen.
Okay, let me roll out some of the thought processes behind it. There are some tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. One of them would be that there are some attorneys in the Texas area who believe that the Adelson Group, that's now the principal owners of the Mavs, they're trying to put pressure on the local legislator to be able to, they want to push forward and open up the gambling markets in Texas. And they've got an idea of this like resort-style casino with the Mavericks in mind, with the arena and everything, but they're not getting the movement with the local politicians the way they want. So one train of thought is that you could set the team up to fail so that it would be easier to convince the rest of the owners in the league for a move to potentially Las Vegas. So that's one tinfoil hat theory that's out there.
This is like a conspiracy theory almost.
Yeah, but there are people that believe that this is the case based on what's happening there locally in the area. The other one is that this could be like a backdoor deal inside the NBA where you had a weird distribution where all of your superstars were in smaller markets. You got Giannis in Milwaukee. Luka was in Dallas, which is a bigger market but not the largest. And you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City. So you make a deal with the Mavs. They get Luka out to L.A., and it helps boost the overall rating because he's obviously going to be a major draw. And when you just sign this multi-billion-dollar deal with the TV partners, you want to make sure that your ratings are looking strong moving into the forward. How do those two foil hat
I don't know.
sound?
I guess I'm more simple-minded. I thought two things that made sense to me. One is that his contract comes up next year, and they're concerned.
Like $350 million on the Supermax.
Yes, and then secondly, let's face it, he's not the most in shape superstar there is, and I think there was some concern on management's part that it was not getting better and that it might become a problem, and he's having some injuries and so on. So is Anthony Davis. But I think they decided now's the time to get rid of him. And to me, oh, my gosh, I mean, I don't know.
I had someone tell me that I trust that, first off, you had Pat Riley. He was out in L.A. recently for Michael Cooper, who I think was he inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's going to have his jersey retired, one of those deals. There was an event for Michael Cooper, the great Laker. So Pat Riley was in town, who, because Coop played for him when he was with the Lakers. And what I was told is that Riley had a conversation with Jeannie Buss and said, look, you need to get a hold of your franchise because LeBron's going to bring you down. So you've got to start thinking about the future. So that got Jeannie thinking about long-term plans post-LeBron, right? Well, the Mavericks, same person told me that with the Mavericks, with the new Adelson Group, is that the Supermax definitely played a part of it, right? Because he's coming up for this deal where he's going to be good for this $350 million contract. And what I was told is that Luka is one of those guys where when he's on the road, you'd have situations where Kyrie would rent out like a Dave & Buster's or some big venue and to get the team together. But Luka wouldn't participate because he wants to hang out with his Euro buddies, sipping on some beverages or whatever the case may be. And so they weren't getting the buy-in with the team where, he wasn't involved in some of those functions. And then you combine that with the less than stellar physique or nutrition habits or the type of grind that you normally see from the superstars. And when they saw that, they're like, okay, we know he's a great player, but do we really want to invest that type of money when we're going to be our cap is going to be mismanaged with that type of dollars if we're going to have a guy that's not going to put that type of time in?
Isn't that funny that Kyrie comes out being the good guy in that equation?
I got to tell you what, I never thought it would happen, but when Kyrie was moved from Brooklyn to Dallas, I didn't think he'd be able to repair the damage that had been done. But he truly has because he's played well. He and Luka got to the finals. They proved they could be good enough defensively together. And he's been
his
a
image
model
has
player.
really changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's really amazing. So props to him for being able to do that. But yeah, that I thought it was funny over the weekend because you had the Mavs fans protesting and chanting, "He's not fat, bring him back." It's just hard to sell that to a fan base when you have literally a top 3 player in the world because it's Jokic, Giannis, and Luka, and you move him for AD, and then the icing on the whole cake was AD playing great and then having to leave the game, and now he's going to be out for multiple weeks with an injury.
Crazy.
It's a classic.
Did you see where they removed a couple of fans last night because one of the guys had a fire
Nico.
Yeah. So that reminded me of when the fans in Portland held a fire Whitsett
and got removed.
A woman got removed from the stadium.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had forgotten this right in the time because I was so blown away by the trade, but Nico's also the same guy that when he worked for Nike, he's the one that blew the presentation to Steph Curry. Nico Harrison was the guy who mishandled the presentation for Nike to Steph Curry, and then Steph jumped to Under Armour, which is interesting to me. So it's crazy how that works. Now, I do want to talk to you about a project that you've started. I don't even know if you have a name for it yet, but you're working on a new book. Do you have a name for it yet?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of a best of. At least I know that sounds presumptuous, but I worked for newspapers for 45 years, and I had the opportunity to do some stories that to me were fairly memorable. So my wife and I have gone through. I have clippings from my time at the Journal and the Oregonian, and then from the time at the Tribune is mostly online. So of this older stuff, we're retyping. We picked out about 200 stories that hopefully will be interesting to people, and I'll have a preface to each story, a short preface. How did this story come about? And then a postscript, what happened after the story. Some of them are with big names like Muhammad Ali and Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain and that sort of thing. Others are lesser known, but to me, human interest stories that I think people will be surprised, Chad, at the access that we were able to have in those days and in the 90s and the 2000s as opposed to now.
Yeah, it's the job has changed. I remember having a conversation with Peter Vesey, the longtime great NBA writer, and I've told you this before, but what Peter was telling me that became frustrating for him is that when he first started and he was writing for Basketball Digest and he was writing, for the papers that are in New York, is that he would go to games and he had developed one-on-one relationships with all these guys across the NBA because Peter was a basketball player for himself and he played at Rucker Park with Dr. J, so he knew all the guys. But he said that those relationships were important because you could go right to the guy yourself. They would let you know what's on the record, what's off. But you could get the real story and then be able to go and put your piece together for the paper to get out the right information. But over time, teams and the league started throwing more roadblocks in to where now it's difficult to get access to guys in the locker room. A lot of players are just brought out to the media room to where they speak to the entire body.
Exactly.
And when players are speaking to an entire body of press compared to one-on-one conversation, they're not going to tell you what's really going on.
In reading through some of the stories, my wife said, geez, you've got all this personal information about Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal and Karl Malone. How did you get that? And I said, well, just what you were saying with Peter, you actually develop relationships with those guys. I'm not sure that happens very often anymore.
How did that play for you back in the day? Like if you wrote a piece that was critical of a player, I was always told that if you wrote a piece like that, you had to make sure you showed up after that and showed yourself so that if there was any type of discussion or the player wanted to talk to you about the story that you wrote, that you had to be there to make sure you showed that respect.
Well, full disclosure, most of the national guys probably never saw your stuff. But in the locker room in Portland, yes, absolutely. You had to be there, and there were times when you had to be critical. And I rarely had any major confrontations with anybody. Jerome Kersey used to jump on me a little bit, but we had a good relationship. And he was one of those guys that actually read your stories.
Yeah, I think don't you think most players, even when they say they don't read it, like they pay attention, don't they?
Somebody alerts them to it. That's what happens.
Yeah, but of course, back then, we didn't have all these access to, websites or different podcasts or whatever. The majority of stuff I read on the Blazers came from the Oregonian.
The newspaper,
yeah. The newspaper, because that was the main source. We didn't have websites back then.
Yeah.
What I like about the idea of your best of book is, like, I grew up reading you, right? So the way I'm envisioning in my mind is that I can flip through, and it's like a soundtrack for my life because I'll remember all of these stories that I have already forgotten about, and I'll be able to go through and be like, oh, I forgot about that, and then go back. Because what I love, and this is why I watch old games or I'll watch a movie a second time or I'll read books over and over again, is because you as time passes, you forget details. And I like to go back and watch something again or read something again because you pick up on details about a certain story. And what I've learned about my memory as I get older, Kerry, like the way I remember a game now doesn't mean that's exactly how it played out. So I'll go back and rewatch it on YouTube, and I'm like, I forgot about that play.
Totally true. It's actually rekindled some of my memories. I'm reading this like, oh, yeah, I forgot all about this. And so that part of it's been a lot of fun, Chad, just to go back and see some of the things that I was able to do. And I'll try to make a cross-section of it because I don't want it all to be old stuff. I want it to be, we'll have some stuff off my website, too. But like you said, I think people will identify with a lot of this stuff, and I hope it'll be a readable. source.
You know, people always ask me this question, and it's a difficult answer because a lot of times I forget. But people are like, who's the best person or your favorite people you've ever interviewed? And the names that come to mind, Sugar Ray Leonard was terrific. Luke Perry, the actor, was really good because I knew he could be feisty if you didn't prepare well for the interview, but he and I connected really well. Buzz Aldrin was interesting. And then I interviewed Captain Sullenberger after he had landed the plane on the Hudson, and he was terrific. But those are some of the ones that come to mind for me. And standing in the same studio with Jerry Rice and challenging him to have me do the hill runs with him down in San Francisco, it was interesting to see him face to face and how he was still competitive. But those things come to mind. But for you, are there any stories that stand out or ones that as you are going back through that you're like, oh, yeah, that was a really good one? Like, was it Ali or something else? Or which ones stand out?
Well,
Probably hard to pick.
I have a couple stories about Ali, but the first one, when he just happened to show up in the airport and somebody called our office, and I hightailed it out there, and somehow I ran him down and I got a one-on-one with him. I mean, this was in 1980, Chad, so he was still, he was retired. I think it was before he made his last comeback. And so it was interesting to see the fans, him chatting with the fans and that sort of thing. I've got a story with Wilt Chamberlain on the 35th anniversary of his 100-point game that I think people will be interested in reading. You know, you mentioned favorite people. It's hard for me to answer that, but I will say that Malone and Barkley are absolutely two of my favorites. I really did get to know them, and they are great people. Barkley is so funny, but Carl is not funny as much as just he's a humble guy, a hard worker, the blue collar guy, and he was we had a good relationship. So those were two of the guys, and Danny Ainge is another guy that I've always had a great deal of respect for.
But how nice was that? Like, let's take Barkley, for example, and I'll never forget when he mentioned you by name on the TNT broadcast during the playoffs. It was amazing, but that had to be nice where you put in the time and effort to connect with someone like Charles. So over the years, you guys had an open dialogue, you guys had a relationship. But my guess is because he knew you and you had a relationship and he could trust you, like he was probably he probably spoke more freely with you. So you got some great detail on whatever was going on in the life of Charles Barkley in the NBA at the time.
This is a true story. I give Charles all the credit for this. I went in as a reporter from Portland, which is not a high market area, right? The first time I met him and talked to him, and must have been 6 months later, I go into Phoenix. He was playing for the Suns then. And I walk into the locker room, and he sees me. He says, "Kerry Eggers, how are you?" Now, you're telling me the second time that he must look at the media coming in that day, a list or something. He could, but from that day on, he always remembered my name. I mean, that to me is impressive.
It really is. That's really great. And he, of course, has come on to be one of the great personalities. But what I respect most about Charles, and the reason why I think people enjoy watching him on TV, is because he just says what he thinks. Like, he says what he truly believes, and there's no filter there. And I think people appreciate the genuine nature of the way he communicates.
Genuine's a good way to put it, and I think he's spot on a lot of the time. And more often than not, I agree with Charles.
Now, Dwight told me, and I don't know if you were a part of these. I assumed you were, but he said that Jerry Sloan was one of his favorites because what Jerry would do is when Utah would get to town here in Portland, he would meet up with you and Dwight and a couple others. They'd go hang out down at Champion Sports Bar right there on the waterfront.
Yep.
And then it was like open chat for multiple hours where Jerry would just sit there and talk and share stories and stuff. What was that like?
That whole Utah Jazz organization, Frank Layden on down. Frank was a great guy, too. His assistants.
I love Frank Layden.
His assistants were great. Gordy Chiesa and Phil Johnson. We got to know the players. You're right. It was such a different thing then. And Jerry was a salt of the earth type guy, and I'm so sad that he got dementia and passed away at a fairly young age.
I had seen a story. I don't know if you know this, but Darren Williams. They had a falling out right before Sloan retired.
Yes.
And Darren said that as time went on, he realized where he was wrong, that he had not treated Coach Sloan with the respect that he deserved. And so Darren reached out to him and was able to connect with him before he passed away to basically say, look, I'm sorry. And so they had that moment, which I was very happy to hear about because you get that a lot with young players where as time goes on, they start to look back and realize how fortunate they were to be coached by certain guys. And Jerry Sloan's one of the all-time greats. He's one of those guys where he may never have won a championship as a coach, but he's one of the best basketball coaches of all time, no question about it.
And a disciplinarian to the core.
Tough as nails.
Yeah, and the players loved him for it because they knew that he was going to treat them fairly. He's going to be tough with them, but he was going to treat them fairly.
Now, for the Trailblazers, who were the guys? You're close with Clyde. Terry, were you close with most of those guys on that group in the 90s?
I don't know about close. I mean, I had a great relationship with most of them. Buck Williams was definitely one of my favorites. He came back and coached here for a couple of years after that. He was just such another blue-collar guy. He weighed 225 pounds, and yet he was an all-defensive guy a couple times, a great rebounder, tough guy. Wayne Cooper came off the bench, and he was one of my all-time favorites. He worked with Jeff Petrie in Sacramento and Portland. So, that group was really special.
Yeah, Wayne Cooper, I knew him from my time in Denver before I moved out here because he was on the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Calvin Nat, I was supposed to go to the Calvin Nat Fat Lever basketball camp, but we moved out to the Northwest, and my parents wouldn't put off the move until after the camp, so I was really bummed out about that.
You know what his nickname was after he retired was Digger. He owned a mortuary, and they
So Digger was his nickname?
Yeah. I did a story on him when he was in Denver, and I think he owned a mortuary at that time.
And then what was the group like? Who were the guys that you were most connected with during the difficult era, the Jailblazer era?
Probably Damon Stoudemire, who I'd known since he was a sophomore at Wilson High School. And, I went up his rookie year. He was Rookie of the Year in Toronto, and he lived at the Sky Dome. He had an apartment at the Sky Dome.
That's
so
amazing.
We did an interview right in the Sky Dome and spent a couple hours with him, and he was always great to deal with. He was wear your heart on a sleeve type of guy. And he had his troubles. If you remember, he had 3 marijuana arrests in, I think, an 18-month period.
Yeah.
And, I think he felt that he got kind of screwed on that, but that was the law in those days. And in any event, he was a great guy to deal with.
Damon's dad used to come over and whoop tail at the racquetball courts at the club I used to work at over in Vancouver.
Really?
He would come over and do some domination there. You know what else you should do? I don't know if you've thought about this, but it might be cool if you took a couple of pages in the book and put pictures up of your I believe that you've kept every media credential over the course of time, haven't you? Do you have them all?
I don't know about that. I used to. I'd have to go back and look up in my attic.
Yeah. It might be good to see a few pictures of those, too.
We can do that.
Because you might be amazed. You talk about the stories and the people you talk to. It might blow your mind to remember some of the events you covered that you've forgotten about.
Yeah, I did have some framed, the press passes from, the Olympics and some of the other things that I did. I'd have to go back and look and see where that was.
What was your favorite era of Beaver football to cover? Was it the Dennis Erickson time? Was it Mike Riley? Was there a particular team? I would imagine the 2000 team was pretty special, but what are some things that jump out about the football?
I didn't cover, when I was at the Oregonian, I never covered the Beavers. So when 2001 is when I started the Tribune, and so that was Dennis the first couple of years, and Mike Riley. Those are obviously the two coaches that, to me, really did a great job and were great people to deal with. And I got along fine with Gary Anderson, but, of course, he had his issues, and then it was Jonathan for a while.
That's cool. Yeah, I like all those guys. Dennis has always been great. I know that Dwight's pretty close with him, too, but Mike Riley's always been a one-of-a-kind gentleman. Always remembers your name, and I was told that his secretary would bring him the Rolodex, and he would flip through and call ex-players when he was still coaching at Oregon State just to check in and say, hey, how you doing?
He's a very popular person, a very authentic person. There's no mean bone in his body, and I think just about everyone who has played with him, played under him, adores him.
All right. Outside of sports, you've done a number of interviews. I know you've done some musicians and concerts and stuff. Is there a person outside of sports that you talked to that you thought was pretty cool?
I've done a lot of interviews with musicians, as you know. Most of them played at Chinook Winds, some of them at Spirit Mountain.
Yeah.
Eddie Money was the very first guy, and he was great. And we got, at the end of the conversation, we started talking about health and the things that... Now, Eddie's the only guy that I've probably interviewed 30 musicians that is now deceased. He died a couple years ago.
That's right.
But he was fun to talk. Huey Lewis was fun to talk to. This was, of course, before he lost his singing voice and so on. Yeah, I've really enjoyed doing those interviews. It's been a lot of fun. Mike Reno from Loverboy was great. Don Felder of the Eagles.
Don Felder.
Gosh, Don was really fun to talk to.
I've interviewed. I interviewed Joe Walsh. I have not talked to Don Felder yet, but yeah, that's awesome. So, how long? Like, what's the? How long is it going to take to put together the greatest hits?
We'd like to have it done and on the shelves by. I won't be on the shelves. It'll probably be through my website, but October 15th. So give you a couple months before Christmas, that sort of thing.
That's great. All right. Well, Kerry Agers, the Dean of Portland Sports. You can check him out at kerryagers.com. Anything else you're working on right now aside from the book?
No, like I said, we got a couple of stories on baseball, Beaver baseball. I'm going down Thursday just as a fan with some fraternity brothers. We rented a house. We're going to take a little vacation down there and get some sun. But yeah, if anybody is not a subscriber to my website, it's kerryagers.com. Go to the homepage, put your email in. You'll be a subscriber. It's free. I'm fortunate enough to have some sponsors that help us with the costs, and then you'll get everything that we write.
All right, Kerry Agers. Well, thank you for lunch. It's great to catch up with you, my friend.
Great to see you, Chad. Thanks.
Well, big fan of Kerry. Nice of him to come by and hang out. Shacker on top of the music once again, thanks to Kerry's reference of Eddie Money. This is a good song. Yeah, crank that. Radio. I also found out that Curtis Long, the principal, is on his way to Eugene right now. He'll be on the PA mic tonight for the Oregon Ducks basketball. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, Money's got a good singing voice and a good variety of songs as well. Or you can find me on social media at Chad and Rip City. The Trailblazers will kick off tomorrow at 6 in Denver. All coverage will begin at 4. And I'll announce the winner of our Trailblazer tickets coming up next. I saw this song performed live a couple of years ago down in Vegas. Edgar Winter was part of the Ringo Starr All-Star Band, and he came out and jammed this bad boy. It sounded phenomenal. It's amazing to me how these aging rockers can still go out there and do their thing for a couple hours on stage at night. Studs. Love that. All right. Transitioning into non-football season, very bizarre. And now we can kind of reset our minds, get ready for March Madness and the stretch run of the NBA season. And then we got the NFL draft. I did see Shadur Sanders hanging out at the Nuggets game last night, watching the Trailblazers. He had some serious bling around his neck. My guess, Michael Holton made a rough guess about $750,000 worth of jewelry hanging on his neck. I would say that's probably fairly accurate. He was looking pretty good. I think he will go probably number one, especially when teams get a chance to talk with him. I think he's a big-time player and should be a star. But I expect him to go number one. My guess would be he and both Travis Hunter will go in the top five. You have two players from Colorado in the top five. And then spring ball's right around the corner. And, pitchers and catchers reporting. And there's always something going on in sports. It's just a difficult transition out of football. I hate that. Hate it. Hate. It's a rough transition. Shacker, you're a big football fan because you watch all the games. Like, what do you do to get through this first week without football? What do you jump into?
I'm fired up for college baseball starting Friday. I'm not worried about it.
Do you work any of the Beaver games with Parker for baseball?
No, I just listen to the games.
Are the Beavers kind of your number one team to follow in college, or do you have multiple teams
Yeah, I
to follow?
use the Beavers to follow the other teams. But, yeah, they're the team I root for and hope that they're in Omaha in June.
Well, it should be kind of fun to watch, with the new schedule this year. They'll be playing teams that, some of them they're not accustomed to playing, so that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, you didn't get him on the air. Raider Mike is saying, he wants to go with me to a Beaver football game, Appalachian State, in October.
He does?
Yeah, because he says he'll still be working there. So I know someone in Boone, South Carolina. Who knew?
Well, there you go. You can hook up with Raider Mike. Just be careful, my friend. Be careful. I have a feeling Raider Mike knows how to get down and have a good time.
So I'm already looking forward to the college football season coming back. I know time flies. It'll be here soon.
All right. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. And congratulations to Josh. Josh is the winner of the Laker tickets. He'll be checking out Luka and the Lakers. From what I heard, he's a LeBron fan, but he'll enjoy Luka as well. So big thanks to listening. We appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, Rip City Drive at 3, game day at 4, and tip-off with the Nuggets and Trailblazers at 6 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.